Yeah, I've come back to the Lord December, January of this year. I had been a Christian for a large part of my childhood, but the trappings of the world got their hands on me, and I ended up going into like drink, drugs, womanising, and all those things that you think are fun that just end up in enslaving you, you know. And I got to a point where, you know, in December, where I just had enough. I didn't know where I was going, what I was doing, you know, and I just found myself sitting up in my bedroom thinking, I've done everything I want to do in life, you know. What else is there for me, you know? And I just found myself crying out to God. And as he does, when you get to that point, he answers you, you know. And I sort of ended up giving my life back to him, and started going back to church, and was, well, this is very good, God, but this ain't really what I'm looking for. So I sort of started praying, and you know, if you don't send me people of a more like mind to me, I'm going to end up going back into the world again. And unbeknown to me, at the same time, Matthew was praying a similar prayer for me, you know, that I've been put on his hit list, as he calls it, to come back to the Lord. And yeah, Matthew, then I got in contact with Matthew. He said, do you want to come up to Rotherham on January the 4th? So we went up to Rotherham to see Nathan Morris, and I spent like an hour on my knees, just cry my eyes out, you know. Got up, went home, went to bed, woke up the next day, and all of the things that have been trapping me, like the addiction to weed and what have you, they were just gone overnight. You know, January the 5th was the first day in about 15 years that I woke up and the first thing on my mind wasn't rolling a joint, you know. And people say that weed isn't addictive, and I can most definitely tell you that it is, you know, because I've been trying to give it up for many years. many years, you know. And I just want to thank God for setting me free from that. Then the nicotine that obviously goes along with smoking things like weed, you know. I was crying out to God in February, look, this is blocking my relationship with you. I want to get to know you, you know. I want to get to know you, Lord, you know, better. And I gave up tobacco. I was watching. Went to a house group meeting. Came home, watched the Steve Hill sermon, and I'd never prayed it before. Never prayed it after. But I said, Lord, just let me get something from this sermon. You know, and the first thing that Steve Hill started talking about was living on the plains outside Sodom and Gomorrah. You're not actually in the city, but it's like what Matt was saying earlier, that you haven't completely given yourself over to God. You know, there's still little bits that you're holding on to. You know, and I said to the Lord, all right then, I'll get rid of my tobacco there and then, everything in the bin, everything ripped up. You know, and said to him, I can't do this on my own. It's got to be you. It's got to be you. And for a couple of days, I was all right. And it just, the third, fourth day, it just got too much for me. I couldn't fight off the urge to roll up a cigarette. And I was like, Lord, I've got to go to the shop. And seriously, I put my scarf on, and I heard this voice that said, David, if you go to the shop now and buy some tobacco, I'm never helping you give up smoking ever. And the craving was just gone like that. And since that moment, I have not had a craving for a cigarette. You know, I can hang around people that are smoking, you know, and it's just not there. It's like I've never smoked. It's like I've never smoked, you know. And just moving on to something else, the obedience thing that you mentioned today, Matt. Yeah, I was obviously went to see Melvin Banks with a few of you guys on Friday, and I'd made some bread for a couple of friends of mine, because I was going to go and see them. 2 loaves, one for my friend, one for his father. And I was walking up to the bus station, and as I walked past, I saw a homeless lad sat there, and I thought, and I walked past, and I heard a little voice in my head, which is obviously God, saying, "Give him one of those loaves of bread." And I walked on, and I was like, I can't do that. Because if I do that, then I'm only going to have 1 loaf of bread when I'm out in Yarmouth, you know. And I mean, Daniel or his dad, I'll have to go with that, you know. And for a couple of minutes, I sort of argued with God. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not listening to you. You know, you don't know what you're talking about. You know, I sort of had a look at this bloke a couple of times. He wondered what I was staring at. You know, and in the end, as I do now, I put up a bit of a fight, but eventually I give in. So I went up to the guy, gave him a loaf of bread, told him, you know, fresh made bread. You need it more than the guys that I'm going out to Yarmouth to see. Got out to Yarmouth. Gave a loaf of bread to Bernie, Dan's dad. Went upstairs to see Daniel. He wasn't about, you know. So God obviously knew that he weren't there. And if I hadn't have obeyed God, I would have been stuck with a loaf of bread and a guilty conscience as well at the same time, you know. So, you know, just because you don't understand, because you think you know better, doesn't mean that you do know better than God. He does. He knows what's best for you, you know, and he's not telling you to do things out of spite. He's telling you to do things because he loves you.
And to stay connected.
Yeah.
Amen. Okay, you want to jump in?
Not really.
Nigel, are you going in as well?
I'm standing at the side if I can get away with it. So if I can't, I'll just push it and give you the rest of your line.
It's over.
Respect.
Right.